welcome to another chapter of life in a Design Under Influence podcast with Alex and Willard, chopping things up to make your life easier when it comes to, eventually transitioning from your AutoCAD or similar to, Graphisoft, ArchiCAD or similar. Some of this may be applicable to Revit. Is it applicable at all? No.
Some of it. I think it's there's certain techniques that specifically for this episode, I think there's certain techniques that are a little bit different.
Yeah, and we're talking today about migrating data. And that's, we did a multi-step process to help you kind of think through and plan your migration or transition to ArchiCAD. But today we're going to dive deeper in specifically data migration. So maybe, Willard, can you lay it out for us as far as the framework and how to think about it, and then we'll dive deeper into each point.
Yeah, so I think if you come this far in your journey to realizing the benefits or just even exploring the potential of leveraging ArchiCAD in your tool set, you're probably at a point now where you have a lot of AutoCAD files, and you are now needing to figure out how to get that information into ArchiCAD. So that's the premise of this episode.
How do we think about it? What's the approach? What are the steps required? Maybe, again, I'm trying to get a sort of an easy 1, 2, 3 1,000-foot view, and then we start landing the helicopter.
So the 1,000-foot view is that ArchiCAD is really good about translating information. So that is not the issue that you're going to be struggling with, is whether or not the information can be translated. What you're going to be struggling with is the amount of information that you are translating, the type of information, and then potentially how that information is originally represented in your native application.
So amount, type, and how it's represented, meaning how it's represented right now, or how it would be interpreted by...
Probably both, a little bit.
Okay. How it's represented and interpreted. Okay, so let's talk about the amount. Let's talk about like what do you see out there? You've helped these migrations. What do you see as being kind of on the easy side, and what do you see being on the more challenging side as far as the amount of info? And how far do you go to convert your projects? You go to convert them all, or what? How do you do it? What do you do?
I don't think you need to convert all of them because you can typically just keep them in a repository and reference them as you need them. And in terms of the amount of information that you are having to convert, I would just pick things that are mission critical initially, and then maybe things that are good references, so like detail libraries or various details or even example projects that you want to leverage in the future. And then even maybe just a project that you are fond of, and use that as a test project to explore the techniques and tools that you have available to be able to do this process successfully time and time again. And then being able to train other people on how to do this is going to be critical.
So let's say you have multiple ongoing projects, you have some archive projects. Do you transfer all of your existing projects, and what is the timing for that? Maybe touch on that a little bit.
I wouldn't transfer all of your projects. I'd probably take a handful of projects that you're currently working on, and probably start with, I would take probably the smaller project first out of 5. If you had, just say you had 100 projects, I'd pick 5, and then I'd pick out of that 5, I'd just pick the one that is a little bit smaller in square footage. or less complicated, just to kind of do a warm up in terms of understanding the process, and some of the opportunities that you have in the process.
So I'd say, I like that. I like when we get to metrics. So, you got 100 projects, pick five, and then out of five, pick one, simpler one, lowest square footage. Good advice. How long, what is the transition? Like, how long does the translation happen, I suppose, or transition happen? What do you have to sit there and watch it, watch the line move, or are there certain actions you need to take to prep the file before moving it? Talk us, get a little technical, if you would.
Yeah. So in terms of, I would, so I guess for me, because I have been using ArchiCAD natively for such a long time, I haven't really had too much access to AutoCAD as a native, authoring tool.
Mhm.
More tangentially. So for me personally, I prefer just to bring the files across. So instead of trying to do a lot of manipulation to the file before I bring it across. But to make it a little bit easier, you could go in and um, you know, reduce your layers, purge, any unused elements in that file so that you're not bringing across a bunch of data that is empty or, could hinder the file's performance later. But if you don't do that initially in AutoCAD, and say, for instance, you had a license of AutoCAD, it expired, you no longer have access to AutoCAD, but you have all these files that are in AutoCAD or a DWG or something of that nature, and you want to translate them, you can basically just go into ArchiCAD and there's two different ways you could do it. You can basically do a drag and drop into the kind of plan window, or I typically bring them into another kind of area called a worksheet.
Mm.
Um, and or you can bring them into a detail. But the worksheet I like because it always is two-dimension, kind of plane. Same with the detail, but the worksheet allows you to kind of create an isolated area that is not part of your floor plans or your elevations. The only reason I do this is because there is the possibility, depending on how you bring it in, that the ArchiCAD file will start to change a little bit in terms of what it's seeing, or like the layers or line types or fills that exist inside of ArchiCAD. It will try to anticipate that you might want to reference that information at some point and populate your file with that information. So just kind of a good rule of thumb for me is just to bring it into more of a quarantine area where I can bring it in, I can look at it, I can assess what layers things are on, what line weights are being used, and things like that. And so for me, it's a little bit easier to manipulate the information in kind of this isolated quarantine area. But also I can do similar activities that I would be doing in AutoCAD, in ArchiCAD, in this environment anyway. So I don't feel the need for me personally to do a bunch of work in AutoCAD to prep the file to bring it across. I just bring it across, and then I will manipulate it inside of ArchiCAD to control what I want to see, or the things that I want to isolate. Meaning that if for some reason within this area that I'm bringing in a bunch of information, there is duplicates or layers or things like that that I'm not really wanting to deal with, or I don't want to see in there. There are some tools within ArchiCAD that allow me to do something called check duplicates, where I can go in and wipe out anything that is exactly the same element inside of that file, inside of ArchiCAD, inside of this area. So, and why I gravitate towards that specific tool is because in AutoCAD, for whatever reason, or maybe it's a technical thing that users do while they're in there, but I often find that when I bring in an AutoCAD file, especially one that's been heavily adjusted or worked on, that there are tens of thousands of duplicate items inside of that file that can cause the file to not function as smoothly as it potentially could, because it's just a lot of polygon data, which is basically just points that are taking up memory inside of the computer. So isolating them, and then potentially there might be other elements that you just want to get rid of altogether. Sometimes fills inside of AutoCAD will come across as vector information. So if you had let's just say a hatch with multiple different lines in it, instead of it just being more of an image, it's like a very detailed line work that is almost unnecessary. So going through and just visualizing what that information is, changing the scale of the drawing so that you can see it as it would be natively. But other than a few things that you might want to look at, almost, I don't know, I think this is probably the 5 to 10% of the population who really need to see these files be as optimal or optimized as possible. But for everybody else, like if you're bringing in a single family house or a small commercial building or even a large commercial building, you could just bring that across, and then you probably don't have to do too much manipulation to it. And then you can start converting that to a BIM file.
And okay, so still, your recommendation is to bring it into worksheet, so you can kind of make sure there's dedupe it and whatever, right? And make sure there's no interpretations there that you're not really anticipating, that ArchiCAD made for you. Is that accurate? And then from there, you once you feel the file is in a good shape, then you do what?
Then I would start creating the actual parametric data. So basically, there's a few areas inside of ArchiCAD that exist as only two-dimensional space. So they're not parametric areas. They are basically like a sketch area. And then there's other areas that, so then there's the parametric kind of workspace. And so what I do is I bring it into this flat area that will never be three-dimensional space, because I know that the information that I'm working with is only flat information and it is not parametric. So there's no reason to confuse the more complicated software with this rudimentary kind of application or representation of information. So I keep it isolated. Then what I do is what's called tracing. So there's a feature inside of ArchiCAD that allows you to take a drawing or an area or something that you have within your organizer, which is like where you see the different iterations of the information that you're looking at. And I trace it. So it's like a digital way for me to take that information and bring it into the area that I'm working in currently. So Now I'm in this parametric sandbox, and I can bring in that two-dimensional AutoCAD file that I imported. And so I lay it down basically on my parametric drafting table. And I'm looking at this information. I can change the scale of it so that's important, because inside of AutoCAD, the way that it deals with text and other information, that getting the scale right will help you see the text correctly. And so I get the scale correct. And then I start picking at my toolbox of the tools that I am going to use to represent that information. So if I'm looking at a 2D set of plans, and I'm going to, what I'll do is I'll inside of my parametric sandbox, I'll hit some presets that come from my template, and I'll say, okay, I'm working in a floor plan. I am working in construction documents, and this is, a scale that I am familiar with. And let me trace this information. And if I start working on the exterior walls, then I'll pick my exterior wall layer, or my favorite wall that comes down from a list. It's my exterior wall. It has all the settings that I need. And then I just can either what's called magic wanding, and I can use this magic tool, and it'll find the edges of this line work. And then I can basically place the walls. So now I place the walls, and if I'm doing the first floor, then I can, and if I have the second floor, because it's, it's a 2D drawing that might have all the drawings in one area, then I can go up a story in my parametric sandbox. So now I'm on a different story, and I can trace or align the drawing so that I'm looking straight down on the floor plan, and I can bring into this space another trace of the second floor. And then I can look at it, trace it, and do that same iteration and start to populate this file with the parametric information that I'm extrapolating from the AutoCAD information as a reference file. And in reality, this technique works for 95% of the software out there. So if it's a Revit file, if it's if it's PDF, if it's a whole host of different file types, you can do a similar, not exactly the same, but a similar technique to bring it in and start to generate the information that you need inside of ArchiCAD that's native.
Okay, let me try. This is good. I love how you just you imagine doing this and you talking through as you do it in your imagination, because you've done it so many times. That is so cool. But for some of us who are not as imaginative, because we haven't used ArchiCAD in our lives yet, I guess, bring in a file into the worksheet, dedupe it, make sure everything's aligns and everything is to your liking, and then start basically getting that file going from flat into parametric by tracing, and then dropping your walls, presumably you have some, into it, and the second story to keep building up. That sort of is the process, and you're saying the process is kind of the same across the board for all different file types that you bring into the graphy, into ArchiCAD. Did I get it right?
Yes, I would give you an A.
Wow, got an A. You heard it here first. So it's I guess it's easy but not simple. But once you do it once or twice, three times, and you help customers do this too, right? You help people who convert, kind of work that process into their memory, and for their employees as well, to sort of understand the process. And make it sort of pretty much easy next time over, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, right on. I appreciate it. This was a nice knowledge drop there, Willard. Thank you. I love following your thoughts. I've never seen it. I've never used it, and yet I could imagine it. How cool is that?
Yeah, totally.
All right. So with that, we are Arc IT. We help architecture and engineering design firms with their technology, go into a better, more sophisticated system is the future. And if you're, pursuing the future, we're here to help as well. So we not only help with your, day-to-day computer usage and servers and whatnot, but we'll also help you with transition into a system like Graphisoft, or ArchiCAD, I should say. Well, any parting words of wisdom? Like if there's one thing you can tell people, hey, make sure you think about A or make sure you do B, what would it be? Where the gotcha's at?
I'm trying to think of where the gotcha's at, but um, it's amazing because ArchiCAD is really, out of all the applications I've ever used, it is really one of the most friendly for translating information from other applications and also converting the same information or native information out to other applications. And I honestly think that this is one of the funner and more pleasurable kind of experiences you can have with a digital, a CAD software. So I don't know if there's any gotchas. I'm trying to think if there's any like real
Well, you don't have
gotchas.
to conjure them up. This to
Yeah,
me is good enough of a little tip. Is like, hey, this is you're building up. You going through a lot of steps and thinking through, the conversion, a lot of frustrations potentially, and going to something new is hard, but converting the projects is actually fun. That's what I want to do here.
yeah,
It's actually the fun part. This is where you get to actually create, and that sounds to me like a really encouraging thought here at the end. So I appreciate that. All right, well, everyone, thank you very much for watching, and we salute you for the courage to transition and move to the future. If you're making this move, and if you're not, it's not that hard, according to Willard.
yeah.
Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you all next time.
But